Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning into the April 10th meeting of the Athens Shade Tree Commission. We have a little bit of a packed house here tonight. But to kind of start off, we will establish our quorum, which 4-4, so quorum established. And then has everyone had a chance to look at the meeting or the minutes from last month's meeting? Can I get a motion to accept those?
Motion.
Motion, second?
Aye. Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All right. And then we are going to move things around here a little bit from what they are on the agenda. We have a gentleman here going to talk to us a little bit about the Blackburn Landing project. So we'll move him up before we have our presentation afterwards. So can I get a motion to change the agenda to move that up?
Motion.
Motion, second? Second, all in favor? Aye. All right. So, gentlemen from Blackburn Landing, you have the floor.
Hi, good evening. Good evening. My name is Sean McMickle. I'm with Spire Development. We're a affordable housing developer based out of Columbus, Ohio, and we are presenting Blackburn Landing. It's going to be a 50-unit multifamily housing development, and it will be located at 142 Albany Road, which is midway between Andover and Blackburn Road on the south side of town. 50 units. There's a single-family home that we will be tearing down to accommodate the development. As part of this development, we're going to help design a shared use path to connect pedestrian infrastructure from our project to existing infrastructure on Richland. So a little under a mile of shared use path that we'll help be designing, which is just a positive of the project that we like and think will be a benefit to the community, in addition to providing much needed affordable housing that's needed in the community as well. And so I did bring some larger hard copies of the landscaping plan that I can distribute. Maybe it might be easier to see in a smaller print.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Some extra copies there. So this is what we have in mind as far as our landscaping plan. Unfortunately, we are not able to meet the shade tree requirements. The site itself it's a condensed site. We are focused on density on this site rather than, it's just not very big. There's not much space. And so the change in impervious surface related to parking and the buildings, by our calculations, would require, I believe, either 58 large trees or 116 medium or some combination thereof. We are much less than that. There's also some challenging topography on the site as well. And so due to grading and then the ideal site layout to make sure that we have safe fire truck access and things like that, we are somewhat restricted in the amount of trees that we can plant on the site. So right now we're showing 2 large trees and 10 medium shade trees. And we also have a host of many other landscaping attributes as well, of some hedges and privacy screenings and things like that that will be incorporated in the plan as well. So this is, of course, a working draft at this point, and we're welcome any suggestions or input on the final design, but this is what we have in mind at this point.
Gotcha.
So happy to answer any questions you may have about the project itself, or also happy to entertain any suggestions or thoughts on how we can improve our landscaping design.
Could you talk about the shared use path
Yeah, sure. So
specifically?
we're going to help the city to engineer a shared use path that will run along the Highway 50. So it'll be in the ODOT right-of-way. And the idea behind that is this is an affordable housing development, and not everyone will have access to cars. The The site itself is very close, within 200 feet of an established public transportation stop, but also there will be, the shared use path will help with pedestrian infrastructure as well.
Does it go all the way to under the overpass?
The final design
Richland?
will, yes.
And how does it cross that highway?
It goes under it.
Oh,
And then mixed use, I assume it's basically a bike path for intents and purposes?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you said, I believe, like 156, is that what you quoted us on?
Yeah, we were calculating either 58 large trees or 116 medium.
Okay. And then how short are you guys falling of that, from what this is?
We're pretty short. We've got 2 large and 10 medium.
Okay. Gotcha.
could the mixed-use path have some trees? I mean, it
Those would
seem-
those would be off our,
Because that's in the ODOT right-of-way, we'd have to talk to ODOT about allowing trees on there. That would be their responsibility to maintain those trees. So that's a great idea, but before we do that, we'd have to coordinate that with ODOT.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna kind of hit on that as well. So basically the dashed, not the dashed, but triple dotted line would be basically is that the parcel outline
correct.
that you guys are working with?
Yeah, the bold.
So it does show like a handful of these technically planted just outside of the parcel. Is that, those are still allowed, to be counted towards the?
Actually, it has to be on the site to count.
Okay.
As
It
a,
looks like the one kind of in the northeast, or I guess east corner of it, in the very south corner would be just beyond those lines.
So
I may
believe
not.
those might be existing.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
that is, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is definitely a lot for us to take in.
Sure.
Do we know, like, has this been zoned already for the residential use?
Yes.
Where is it in kind of like the approval processes and stuff?
It meets the existing zoning requirements, so
Okay.
it is zoned to R3, which is multifamily use. And so you don't have to, he did not have to change the zoning for that. That's the way it was zoned.
Gotcha. I mean, I don't think I have any major concerns as I see it. I assume we need to approve this before it moves ahead?
You want to make a recommendation because the planning commission needs the board's recommendation so that they can do that final approval for the Title 41.
Okay.
Here, because they don't have all of the trees required, we do have an option to bank those trees. If I recall, I think it's $225 per tree, and that's banked into a special account that is only allowed to be, it doesn't go into the general fund, it's only allowed to be used for tree planting, tree maintenance, tree removal, that kind of stuff. So it's a special banked area for that. That's up to the Shade Tree Commission to decide if that's an acceptable substitute for planting the required number of trees on site.
Okay.
So the board would have to make a decision if they want to accept that in lieu of the planting those trees on site.
Okay. I mean, I think tentatively, things look okay to me. Does anybody have any
I'd be
immediate
curious to
concerns?
know how to further the conversation with ODOT and whether or not more trees could be planted along there.
So as we're designing the shared use path, so they're going to help us with the design of that shared use path. As we do that design, the city's actually going to take the project on, and the city will be coordinating directly with ODOT on the finalizing the design and then the construction of that project. So this developer is going to help with the preliminary design of that. It's something we really need, so the city wants to move forward on that, but it's going to take some coordination with ODOT to make this actually work.
Gotcha. I mean, I definitely agree with Michael. If we can, if there's going to be that level of cooperation between us and ODOT and you guys, I don't see like basically waiving or allowing it to count towards if you guys are developing that path to if we can get it worked with the state to, count those that are planted in a lawn, maybe even, this would kind of be a bigger project as well because it's we can't really match side by side, but even considering planting along the other side, if they're already taking on care, that may be kind of a way for us to think about planting those in rather than keeping them in the bank. So I like that idea, and would definitely, I think we should be, I'd like to be involved a little bit, to whatever degree you think is appropriate in those conversations. But tentatively, I don't think I have any major concerns with this. I think I would like to give us until next month to approve that, if that doesn't hold up the timeline in a crazy manner, just so we can look it over. This kind of just landed on our lap today. And then we may even be able to, if you guys have a really tight timeline or something like that, we could probably even meet for like a proxy vote or something in kind of the shorter term. But yeah, obviously the property has a lot of space restrictions, so I understand that. But as long as it's going into the tree bank and, if we can, I would rather have them be in the ground than in the tree bank. So if we can work that, I think I'd be happy to work with this. And
So timing-wise, it's probably not gonna, the shared use path is not gonna occur at the same timeline as this development. Mr. McMickle, what time frame do you have for your construction?
Yeah, we were hoping to begin construction next month.
okay,
So if this were pushed another month, it would potentially delay the project.
okay,
So this project in particular is funded by tax credits, and there's some very specific timing aspects to that we have to deliver units by a certain date.
okay.
So the timeline is, we are sensitive to timeline. That's not to say that we can't take more time, but we could maybe move a second vote or something before the next meeting, a month from now. That would be
Yeah,
helpful.
that's kind of one of the big limitations with this monthly meeting.
Well, one of the things the board can, or the Shade Tree Commission can decide to do is, as I said, to bank those trees. And then if we decide we want to plant those on the shared use path, then you already have that set aside to be able to do that. It actually makes for more flexibility for you deciding what you want to do. If you, as you recall, we've got a lot of trees still with the Menards tree bank where they just have the trees available. We have to come up with a way to plant those, right? Mm-hmm. So this gives you a little more flexibility if you would want to decide to accept the banking of these trees in lieu of waiting for this project to come through, because it might be a while before that actually gets built, because it does take a bit of time for us to coordinate with ODOT. They're going to create the preliminary design. ODOT and the city will work doing a final design, and then the city will move forward with the construction of that project. But it might not be this year. It might not be in 2025. It might be in 2026 or later.
Gotcha.
Is there anything that's going along like the drive-in?
Yeah, we had originally thought about doing that, and the reason we don't have trees there is we are considering a second phase. And if we were to build a second phase, we might need to utilize that space. So rather than get approval for something, than to just ask for permission to not build it there, we did not put any there. That second phase, we won't know for a number of months whether or not it's moving forward.
Gotcha.
Can I ask a question, just as an audience member?
Yeah.
It's up to you.
Bowl out, Ann.
My name is Connor, I'm a forester living there. What, it seems like I haven't seen it.
You want to see it, Ann?
It seems like the development is too big for the site. If you can't fit all the requirements into it, could the development be better, fit into the limitations of the site and the requirements of the city?
Yeah, I can understand and appreciate that, but we are fully compliant with zoning. It's actually zoned for quite a quite a few more units than we're actually putting on the site. It's zoned for 80 and we're doing 50. So the unique shape and topography of the site, it's really, that's a pretty large tree requirement. And there's no way to safely design the site for our residents and also have that in it as well. Yeah, we need to have enough space for residents to park vehicles, for the fire trucks to have ample turning radius in the drive aisles and the,
Trees for shade, so that, their kids can play outside.
Of course, yeah.
So that Athens can remain the beautiful, inviting, shady place that it is. The reason why people want to live here and the people will want to live in your development. So, I think that's one of the challenges, the perennial challenges that Athens has, is that the topography really does limit and dictate what's appropriate to build there. So,
Yeah.
that would just be, it's just a thought.
yeah, certainly. And we're not
Even
against.
half the trees.
Yeah.
You're not even 10%.
Yeah, I'm happy to share the site plan, and so you can see the challenges that we're dealing with. But it's not, we're not against trees. In fact, we're preserving as many trees on our property line as we can in order to screen the property from neighbors. And we like the mature trees that are there. But there's also a lot of different factors at play here. There's a need for affordable housing in the community. Specifically, that's what we're delivering. There's a dire need for it, and there's only so many zoned parcels in the community, and there's only so many places it can go. So this is the site that we are, stuck with. And again, we are planting some trees, and we did put some thought, and we can move them around, or we're happy to do that. And we, of course, paying into the tree bank will help plant more trees along the shared use path or wherever that may be appropriate for them. But that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, no, looking at the parcel size and that it is basically a jutting an already, multi-use or, multi-home site, there is a lot of limitations here. And I do appreciate that. Just looking at spacing, I don't see really a way that even utilizing basically the gooseneck that goes back out towards 50, I don't see that you could really make up, even if you were filling in, not considering like a later addition. So I think I would be okay moving this forward. Really my concerns would to be nitpick some of the species that are picked and stuff like that.
Of course.
But I don't know that is worth holding up if the timeline is, scheduled for next month. Does anybody have any major concerns with moving this forward?
I just want to say I do feel comfortable moving this forward so long as we're able to bank the leftover trees and use that funding for future projects. I do see in here that you have a plan to protect the drip line around existing trees with orange construction mesh and signs during construction, so I'm grateful for that. It does seem like you are attempting to be conscious of the trees that are already there and work with the landscape as it is. I think my biggest concern right now is the species list. There are some non-native species on there that we could replace with native species that give the same effect in terms of shrubs and the ornamental elements. I'm curious if you would be open to changes in species and the species composition of the plant list at all, if the price is comparable or if it doesn't change the budget too much. There are just some, there's nothing invasive in here necessarily, but there are some non-native species that we could replace that would just be more beneficial for the ecosystem and our pollinators and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd be open to
Okay.
substitute species.
Cool.
Yeah, so, I think we could pretty quickly get that to you, probably by, I don't know. I would hesitate to say Monday, but probably
Yeah.
Monday pretty quickly.
Yeah.
We have basically a approved tree list. There's ODNR has some pretty good this instead of that type tree planting guides. So we could kind of bounce those around back and forth to you. And then kind of pending just little tiny tweaks. I think I would be happy to move this forward and then bank the trees.
I actually had a question on that. Were you wanting to look at all of the landscaping, not just the trees, for native and pollinator friendly?
Yeah, the shrubs as well.
Shrubs as well. Okay, I just wanted to make that
Yeah.
clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, this will kind of be our wish list. So feel free to push back and, not everything that we will push to you is going to be super readily available. So we will be fine to take a little bit of back and forth on it.
Okay.
But I think pending that, could we, I don't know what's the best way to approve this in absentia, basically, outside of the meeting.
We could make recommendations pending revisions on those plans.
Okay.
If I can coordinate that with you, so if you want to bring some comments forward, I'll send those to Mr. McMickle, and he can respond back to, if it's okay with you, we could do this by email.
Perfect.
With the revised plans, and then I just would hear from you if you have any comments on that. If that would be okay, I can help coordinate that.
Perfect. So I think pending our little review and changes, I'm happy to move this forward. And can I get a motion to accept pending changes?
Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. I think that was it. All right. Thank you, Mr. McNichols.
Thank you very much.
We will be in touch really shortly, probably tomorrow. With that, what do we have next? Nothing under 33, nothing under 37, no maintenance. Dr. Matlack, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'm Glenn Matlack. I teach plant ecology at the university, and my students and I also look at the dynamics of the Athens city forest. And I want to present some preliminary results from our work that might be of interest to the commission. Trees are good in cities. Okay, trees provide all sorts of ecosystem services. They moderate heat. They absorb pollution. They look nice. And in looking nice, they improve property values. They delay runoff. Okay, endless string of benefits that I don't need to tell you about. Now, to put Athens in context, okay, here are the tree cover of a number of cities, our sister cities in the Midwest. They range from about 20% tree cover up to an amazing 40% tree cover in Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. Just for comparison, there's Athens. We have about 32% tree cover. Now, to put that in context, this is Sacramento, California, which has about 24% tree cover. So that's kind of what 24% tree cover looks like, keeping in mind that the figure is for the whole city, and that's just one neighborhood of the city. Now, this is called an urban forest with very clear quotation marks around it. It's not a forest, okay? A forest, that's what you find out in Stroud's Run. It has a complex structure, enormous species diversity, plants and animals. Urban forest doesn't have anywhere near that complexity. But it's like a natural forest in that it's comprised of living organisms. Trees are the keystone species to the extent that trees have a disproportionate role in shaping the environment for all of the other species that are there in the city as it does in a natural forest. And some forms of analysis that are used with urban forests also apply in the urban forest. So we're taking a demographic perspective. That is, we're interested in what causes trees to be initiated, what causes them to grow, to survive, to reproduce, and die. So to simplify this, what causes trees to be born in a city? Well, they're planted, but not exclusively. Okay, you also have patches of unused land in which trees sometimes recruit naturally. What causes trees to die in a city? Whole list of things. Wind damage, disease, construction, vandalism, okay, drought. Okay. So what we're asking is, more specifically, how do trees die in the city, not in terms of the agency of death, but the general process and how that affects the whole tree community. And this has been studied in a number of places, largely in large cities following major tree planting campaigns. Okay, you plant the trees and you monitor their growth for the first 3 or 4 or 5 years. For example, back in the 2000s, New York City resolved to plant 1 million trees over 20 years, and a subset of about 40,000 of those trees were actually monitored. Okay, so studies like that generally show if this is time, this is the planting date, and this is the percentage, the log percentage surviving, okay? Severe mortality early on. The steepness of the curve here indicates the severity of the mortality. But with time, that tapers off, and the survivors survive progressively better. Now, this is generally attributed to planting-related causes. Weak nursery stock, poor planting practice. But hopefully they've survived. What happens to them after that? Well, after that, you have a more gradual survival. Yes, they continue to die. The rate of mortality isn't as severe, and it isn't changing as rapidly. It's rather a straight line on this presentation, which implies that you have sort of random effects, tree-specific, rather than any sort of major city-scale event. Now, this is highly speculative. Okay, that line is based on reports from probably fewer than this many studies. We don't know how long trees survive in urban areas in the long term, but we're determined we're going to find out. So, yeah, why is that a problem? Why do we need to know that? Well, a tree potentially lives decades, maybe centuries. And when we plant a tree in the city, we want it to live decades to provide ecosystem services consistently. We don't want to plant a tree and then have it die 3 or 4 years later. So it's important to understand mortality on a scale of decades. Also, I'm concerned with larger tree planting studies because they tend to be very homogeneous. Okay? Generally, the same species, same age, planted in very similar methods in similar sites. And that's just not the nature of a realistic city. So fortunately, we have a realistic city right here, which we can look at. And the way we want to look at it is to use historical aerial photos. For example, this is in the center of Columbus. There's the river. You see some train tracks. We have major highways. We have parking lots, buildings, and lots of trees. In fact, if you look closely, you can see the canopies of individual trees. There's a lot of useful information in aerial photographs, and we have the good fortune to have aerial photographs of Athens going back to 1939. Okay? Taken an old black and white silver iodide from a low-flying airplane, but there's nothing wrong with the information in them. They have incredibly good resolution. That takes our history back to about 90 years. And if you use some tricks, you can estimate beyond that. We have about 100 years of tree history here in Athens, which is a good 80 or 90 years longer than any published work I'm aware of. So let's take advantage of it. there's Athens. You recognize the river down here. Okay, there's 33 coming down. That's the condo. Right now, we are sitting right in that building there. Okay? So we could sample this with GIS. We could go in there and map out every sidewalk, every piece of lawn, every tree, every building. But we don't have 17 years to do this. Okay, we could probably get a good answer to our question in a different way. Basically, we've just imposed a grid on it with about a 100-meter grid interval, and we just record the land use at each grid point. Now, we can geolocate this and line it up on modern photos, photos from 20 years ago, beyond that, right the way back to 1939. So that means we can follow the fate of the tree at that point for 80, 90 years. Okay, so the first thing you notice, you don't need to collect data for, you just look at it. You see that there are distinct neighborhoods in the city, and they're different. Okay, so for example, up here, we have the historical core of the city. The oldest neighborhoods are from here, a block or two to the north. And that's distinct in its history from the steep slopes to the north of town. And that's easily distinct from the floodplain. Okay, so to get a little more insight into the factors driving tree survival, let's divide our data set up into these three distinct zones. And you can probably imagine other zones, but those are simple ones to start with. So here we have it. That's Athens in 1939, there it is in 2014, and it's different. In 1939, we had a lot of bare area up on the ridge here to the north of town. We have a lot of actually cultivated agriculture here on the floodplain. In 80 years, that's turned into forest on the ridge, and we have development on the floodplain here, including a lot of university. Okay, you might generalize that as sprawl, and in that respect, it's exactly what's happening in every other city east of the Mississippi River, and a good many west of it as well. To put that in a social context, this is the population of Athens. In 1900, if you can believe it, we only had about 3,000 people in Athens. That has grown rapidly, especially following the Second World War, up to about 27,000 people today. And it's useful to compare that with the enrollment in the university, which is the dotted line here. They match almost perfectly. Okay, we are a company town, and Athens rises and falls with the fate of the university. As we have developed the city, each of our sample points on average has become closer to a bit of pavement. It's a good index of development centered on the trees themselves. And we've become a little closer to individual buildings. All right, let's look at that in terms of overall land cover. If this is date, we have land cover at 20-year intervals, and this is simply the proportion of 6 different land uses. Okay, and it's changed. In 1939, the dominant land use was lawn or pasture. Okay, I say lawn or pasture because it's really hard to tell those two land uses apart in aerial photographs. Probably pasture in 1939. Good amount of trees, okay, that's like 24%. Also old agricultural field, and the black wedge up there is active cultivation. Today, or actually 10 years ago, the dominant land use is pavement, okay, up around 35% of the cover of Athens. But there are a good number of trees, And proportionately, we have lost lawn and pasture. Lawn is down to maybe 12%. Okay, today, I know that's lawn. I can't think of any active pasture in Athens. The greatest period of transition was right here between 1960 and 1980. Look at the expansion of pavement in that period. And there's a similar expansion in roof area, but it's not as extreme. Trees appear to have passed through a bottleneck here, okay, between 1960 and 1980. Happily, coming out the other side, we have something like 30% tree cover today. Now, if we break this down into the three zones I described, in the urban core, we see basically the same pattern, except a greater representation of roof, okay, which is not surprising. That's how we defined this zone. It's the urban core. But look at the expansion of rooftop between 1960 and 1980. We get a similar pattern on the floodplain, except instead of expansion of roof, we have massive expansion of pavement between 1960 and 1980. Okay, and on the floodplain, pavement is something like 45% of the total land cover. Okay, where does everybody put their parking lots? Okay, it's on the floodplain. On the slope north of town, we have a totally different story. Okay, the paved has increased slightly. Pasture has decreased, but old agricultural field here, okay, has completely disappeared, and tree cover has increased from large to the dominant land use. That's where the forests are in the city of Athens. Now, we can give a more precise description of this by looking at the status of individual points. Okay, this is a table indicating the proportion of our land use which have transitioned from one land use to another. Okay? Excuse me. This is a transition matrix, which sounds more impressive than it really is. It's just a table showing the number of times a point has changed from one to the next. And I've highlighted the major changes here. The first thing you'll notice is this diagonal here. The diagonal indicates points that have stayed the same. So for example, we have this meant this proportion of points were roof and remained roof in 2014. So what else is happening? Well, a good number of, in the urban core, a good number of tree sites have transitioned to pavement over 80 years. But the real change is a transition from lawn or pavement here to pavement. Okay, so the biggest increase, the recipient of change, has been pavement, and most of that pavement has come from what was formerly lawn. Okay, how does that compare with the floodplain? Well, again, we have this diagonal, which is prominent. We have a number of trees, sites in 1939 that have transitioned to pavement. We have a number of pasture sites that have transitioned. In fact, the largest recipient of land has been pavement. Again, the largest contributor of land has been lawn or pasture. If we compare that with the slopes, again, totally different pattern. Yes, we have lost some trees to pavement, but we've also acquired quite a lot of trees, okay? Mainly from old field and from lawn, okay? This is the trees are the largest recipient of land use change. Now, there are two different processes here. On the floodplain and the urban core, that's about commercial development. On the slopes north of town, that's about ecological succession. That's a biological effect, that's about the absence of commercial development. There is no commercially useful profitable use for this land, so it's just allowed to go back to forest. All right, to return to the demographic theme, here in the top panel, we're looking at mortality, okay? Because we can compare each of these aerial photos, we can tell when trees appeared and when they disappeared. So if we go to all the trees that appeared in the 1939 photo, we see if they're present in 1960 and 1980 and so on. We see a straight line decline here, which implies continuous event-independent individualistic mortality. Similarly, in 1960, we have pretty much a straight line, and in 2000, again, a straight line. Why are there no cohort from 1980? Because 1980 is when the USDA transitioned from black and white photochemical photography to digital, and they didn't do a very good job of it. The resolution is terrible in the 1980 photos. But the implication is that, yes, trees are dying, but they're dying at a constant rate, and it's unrelated to age, and it's similar for the different cohorts we're looking at. All right, if we can do that with deaths of trees, we can also do it for recruitment. When did trees appear? Well, here in 1940, this is the number of trees that seem to have been planted within the last decade based on canopy texture. In 1960, somewhat fewer. Between 1940 and 1960, somewhat fewer were planted. Between 1960 and 1980, wow, something happened there. But between 1980 and 2000, an enormous number seem to have been planted, and in the last two decades, well, rather few were planted. So we may have constant mortality, but we surely don't have constant recruitment. Okay, recruitment is strongly episodic. So, to conclude, yes, recruitment is episodic. It happens in spasms of tree planting. On the other hand, mortality seems to be pretty much consistent, okay, which implies very different mechanisms. This seems to be driven both by commercial development of land and by ecological succession on land which is abandoned from commerce. There are very strong contrasts between neighborhoods within the city. There is not a consistent dynamic throughout the city. Different things are happening in different places. And based on that, I would recommend to the city that we regularly monitor the canopy cover. With Google Earth, we have continuous availability of up-to-date images. We can repeat this measurement at 5 or 10-year intervals. Okay, we shouldn't have to wait 20 years to find out what's happening to the tree canopy. Secondly, I would recommend continuous replanting. We're continuously losing trees. I don't think we should have these episodes of planting and then go 30 or 40 years without planting very much at all. We want an even age distribution. So that's what I think. Okay, you guys are also in one way or the other involved in the urban forest of Athens. What do you think? Is this what you see happening in the city of Athens?
That 32%, you said this in 2014.
Yes.
Do you think that's still like pretty accurate to what it is today, 10
No.
years later? Lower or higher?
I think it's actually lower now, but that's an intuitive impression. I have a student working on this who will give you a 2025 number, but she's not quite there yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think our big piece here, obviously, replanting does kind of, by the social nature of, having to get through a couple levels of bureaucracy, dealing with, private ownership, things like that, it kind of necessitates being in spurts almost, as grants come in, as, trees are not planted in ones. Trees are planted typically in groups. So I do think, that's kind of a harder thing to work on in general, but I do think, and what I have been trying to focus us in on is more monitoring. The big thing now is, one, we're trying to do the BioBlitz to try to group science, citizen science our way into kind of a little bit of a tree inventory. And then actually just a few hours ago, we had a student from OU reach out basically about this same thing of wanting to do tree canopy cover percentages and monitoring loss in the canopy and things like that. So in addition to not just knowing what trees are where, from a ground level, we will know like what is disappearing from an aerial view. So I think that's really, that's the huge piece. And especially, like you said, aerial imagery is, it's updated every month now at this point. You can get pretty reliable scans of, it weekly almost. So I think taking advantage of that and, making that available to the people that actually manage the canopy and do cover. And then, another piece that probably is a big section of this is public education. As much of our urban canopy is based on private land, which is kind of a tricky thing to work with. So empowering and teaching landowners, I think, is kind of a big side project that is works when it works.
It occurs to me that we've just approved a project that proves your point.
How so?
They're supposed to have, whatever it is, 100 and some trees, and they have not even 10% of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, to be fair, looking at what basically we've just approved, would be, like you said, that conversion from lawn mostly to
Pasture to lawn?
pasture to, or lawn pasture to pavement.
Yes.
Basically, the entire thing is going to be pavement with a small portion, boundary trees and, a lot of pavement. But that's the necessitation of kind of the small space that we have there. Another big thing that jumps out to me about this is the need for forestry, for real forestry of the private owners that own, the majority of the forests that cover the slope region. That's where we're kind of cheating and stealing a lot of that, where it cannot be profitable, development land, but stewarding that and doing our best to keep that healthy and keeping an eye on that it's kind of way out of our hands and a little more into your guys' hands.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
It's just an observation, looking at that huge jump in vegetation in 2000, that was also when we started seeing invasive species. That was probably 10 years into my career, maybe a little longer, and pear and bush honeysuckle, ailanthus really we knew about them. We didn't maybe realize pear yet, but I wonder if there's, we haven't talked about composition because, those hillsides might be covered with vegetation, but it might just be dying ash and bush honeysuckle. And that's what the aerial photography doesn't show. I think what you were trying to say.
I just wanted to thank you for your work and your time presenting today. This is really helpful for contextualizing where we're at, where we've been. And I do agree with your conclusions that we do need more regular monitoring and we need to continue replanting. And I think those are both actions and practices that would be a lot easier if we had a dedicated urban forestry department in the city. that was regularly monitoring our tree canopy and using the data that we have available through satellite imaging, as well as this historical data to kind of compare, and then put together an actual replanting plan. So I think we have the information, we have the data, we need resources now to put this together and put a program together. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Matlack.
Actually, I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I had a question and maybe a follow-up question for you. In the data that you're doing, can you tell if the mortality of trees is associated with proximity to pavement? And if that's the case, would you be able to tell the board here where the best location for planting of new trees should be? If you're going to plant them in a more of an open space, away from, on the riverbanks, rather than trying to plant them right up against pavement. Is there a way for this study to check and see those two things?
Yes, there is. We can take each of those sample points and measure the distance to pavement and compare mortality at points close and far away. And in tandem with this, we're doing a parallel study in which we simply walk down the street and measure the neighborhood of individual trees. So that's part of the mix. No, I don't have an answer right now.
Okay. I think it would be helpful for the board here to give them some direction on where the best place is to plant trees to make sure that their survivability is maximized.
Well, I can guarantee you that they are going to do better the farther away from pavement there are.
That would be my guess.
Probably the leading cause of ill health and slow growth in urban trees is pit size.
Yep.
Okay, we all know that.
Yep.
On the other hand, so should we necessarily plant trees in places we know they're successful, or should we plant trees in places where we need them? Okay, from a perspective of ecosystem services and urban heat islands, we need to have the trees where the pavement is, not to avoid the pavement. So I would encourage the city to start cutting holes in sidewalks and putting in trees. And occasionally they do it.
And I think, matching the scale of development with the land that can support that.
Yes.
So, it's unfortunate that it's so late in the game to learn about that. And of course, that would be so, it's probably silly to even bring that up at this stage. But honestly, maybe that site should only have 40 units, or even less, because the research is strong. Where we need the trees is where the people are and where the infrastructure is.
Yeah.
Where the pavement is.
Where the pavement, thank you.
Yeah.
Have any of your studies looked at public versus private, or is it as a whole scale?
No, we are doing that. Okay, we have an awful lot more data on those sample points that I haven't shown you. This is, it's supposed to be a short presentation.
He's done so much research on the city. This is only a one thing, all the other things you've accomplished.
So, no, I can't give you an answer.
No, I didn't expect an answer, but I just didn't know if that was something you were looking at as you're moving forward, so.
Yes, sir. Okay, well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Matlack. I think it was a good way to kind of get us refocused on, we are the people in charge of keeping tree cover.
And we should have done these presentations in the opposite order.
Well, maybe Mr. McNichols could have, like I said, maybe we could give him some bonus points for sitting through it. But, yep, to continue on, and we'll hear from you here in a minute. We have a little point that maybe I'd like to have you speak to here, but to kind of continue on to our new business. One of the other things that I kind of wanted us to dig in on is the city's beginning its comprehensive plan review board. I would like to see if we could have some sort of a voice on that. I know it's sort of ad hoc and being deliberate on
So our city planner, Megan Jennings, is heading that up. I can make sure to let her know that this commission is interested in having some input into that. I'm sure she'll get in touch with you on that, because this is really an integral part of the whole comprehensive plan.
Absolutely. So to kind of go along with that, I was hoping, it's going to be probably a big board. I would like to see if anyone has, really vested interest in kind of being the point person between us and the review board.
I could do it.
Gene?
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
We'll put you on it.
Cool.
We'll stick you on them. Yeah, I did kind of want to make that point. I think between us and, I'm sure we'll probably have someone else in the sustainability commission as well, kind of voicing the concerns. But wanted to make sure that we were, kind of a voice in that next 10, 20 years of development that Athens is planning out.
Quick question. In terms of making that connection, should I reach out to Megan or?
You can if you like. I'll
Okay.
tell her that give her your contact information, but please reach out to her
Okay.
as well.
Great, thank you.
Perfect. We covered Blackburn Landing. So one other thing, I think this might have got pushed down somewhere, but I would like to hear from Ann about the Tree City USA event.
Oh, awesome.
We'll give you the floor, and I would like to, I don't know, wherever has a spot. I think Ryan will find you with one of the cameras.
Hey, thank you. So next Thursday, April 17th, our region will be celebrating our annual Tree City USA event. This year, the Village of Middleport is hosting. Every year, a dedicated, generous, hardworking village or city agrees to host. It's a big deal, but it's also a great opportunity too to show off what they've accomplished and to facilitate the networking among communities who are all dealing with the same challenges, just like you guys. So we have 15 Tree City USA communities, some of which are some of the oldest in the state of Ohio. One is one of the oldest in the United States. It's the city of Marietta, 46 years. They've been a Tree City USA. I think Athens is, help me out. How long has Athens been a Tree City?
I think 30.
It's 30-something years.
Yeah.
It's long. It's a long time.
Long
Yeah.
time.
A lot to be proud of. Yeah. So I hope that your city will be represented. If you are interested and can make it happen, we do need to know as soon as possible, just to solidify the lunch. You said April 17th? April 17th, yes, next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
1 week from today. I can't make it.
Can't either.
I would like
I'm out
to.
of town.
There's so many things happening on April 17th.
Not to stare at you too hard, Gene. But
It's such a hard time of year.
yeah,
What
So-
time on Thursday? Is it an all-day
It's a
event?
day-long thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Megan attended last year to represent the city.
She's not able to this year. The city would be willing to pay your fees for that. So
Okay.
if you are interested, please let me know and I'll get that coordinated.
I will have to look at my class schedule just to make sure.
I hate for you to have to, that's,
There's a lot going on this season.
you do. And I think pruning and planting trees in Logan right now might
Yeah.
supersede
It's a little on my
attending the-
mind. Yeah,
Gotta keep in line with that grant.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you know as soon as possible.
Hey, if Athens isn't represented, I keep your award.
You gotta have that fun hat, right?
What's that?
They gotta have that good hat.
Right,
Yeah, yeah.
right.
but I would like to, basically Tree City USA is one of the main reasons that the Tree Commission exists. So, I did want to kind of recognize it and give a little shout out to, if anyone at home is listening and
Yeah,
has
I
a really
appreciate
vested
that.
interest.
And this is also the time of year where you've got to be thinking about those 4 requirements you have to meet every year to maintain your status as a tree city. Having an Arbor Day, making sure the leadership at the city is celebrating Arbor Day, has a proclamation for it, making sure your ordinance actually supports and protects the trees that you're charged with managing, and that $2 per capita. So I know you guys meet that, but the big thing's the Arbor Day. So, and I think Sam Crowell, who is city council member, is doing something, I believe, to celebrate Arbor Day.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you.
So just a quick plug there. So old business, what we have been covering. So I'd like to get kind of a quick update from our committees. Joanna, you're first on the chopping block here.
I have nothing to update. I got your name on the website now, so
That's a big.
that's my update.
Nice.
That's a big change. Grants, Gene, how is the IRA funding looking?
Yeah, so good, in the right direction. As I think everyone was on the email from Ann, but the new due date for the application is August 27th. So we have all summer to work on our application and gather our materials and get letters of support, things like that. I've been working with Mary Reed of the Arbor Day Foundation, touring around the city and finding potential planting sites based on other projects we've worked on and projects that she's worked on. So we have a general map of where we would like to plant, which is nice for our application. And other than that, yeah, I'm talking with folks to get those letters of support and start to put together the outline of the application. So have more updates soon.
Perfect. Exciting stuff. Me. So the Bio Blitz, which is planned for April 19th, Saturday, April 19th at noon at the Eastside Library. We will be kind of walking around the east side, trying to basically do a pilot proof of concept of using citizen science to kind of inform us and hopefully allow us to kind of jerry rig a street tree inventory up. One of the big kind of issues that we're running into, and I'm hoping, I've heard rumblings that this is in the work, that one of the really big key aspects that we could use would be a right-of-way map or layer in GIS, which I know is a notoriously tricky thing. I have heard rumblings that maybe James Dyer is working on it, that maybe Megan Jennings is working on putting something together.
I could talk about that for a few minutes if you like. I don't want to get too far in the weeds with it. This is an old city, and a lot of the right-of-way is prescriptive, which means it was handed down from state and federal laws in the 40s and then again in the 60s, where the old township roads that the city acquired had a dedicated or had a right-of-way that was based on whatever date they came into the city. So it could be 40 feet width, 60 feet width, 55 feet width, and it all is highly variable, but it's not platted anywhere. You could go to the Athens County Engineer's office, and they have a street map book where they but just have streets listed. And these would be the old township roads that have now been acquired, like Longview, that have now been acquired by the city. It wasn't called Longview at the time; it was called Township Road, whatever. And there's no really defined right-of-way there. It would be great to have that, but the majority of our streets don't have a platted right-of-way. So so where they're platted, you can actually see that on the county auditor's site. We're trying. I've been working with Megan because it's a big deal for everything, not just for where the trees are located, but utilities and where who has to maintain what. So it is kind of a big project, but we've been working on that. I've been doing a lot of research. You have to go back into the county records from years and years ago to try to dig out where those right-of-ways and easements are. So we are trying to work on that, but it does take, it's going to take a bit of time and effort to get that corrected.
Gotcha. Yeah, I assumed it was a very, very long-term effort. It would, basically what we're trying to do is get try to steal all of these iNaturalist updates. So if we could have some sort of overlay, which, we could basically just do a rough 50 feet off of the center line of the streets. We could basically cut out all the clutter of people reporting things in their backyard and things like that, and just kind of steal that and kind of double check it. So that's just one thing I wanted to bring up. I'd heard rumblings about it. But the big event is April 19th. It's planned, family friendly. You don't need to know anything about trees. Probably the less you know about trees, the more you'll get out of it. So it should be some fun. Let's see. Fall planting. So I had met with Catherine Ann from Parks and Arts. Arts and Parks. I had kind of been nursing the idea that I would like to put in some trees now that the new firehouse is completed and they've put in that outdoor gym kind of on that park and around the bike path around there. I had met with her at the site, kind of preliminary covered it. She seems pretty happy with it. She backs the idea. It seems like, there's good cooperation there. The timing does not work out perfectly. We are kind of closing the door on spring planting season. So hoping to push this into the fall, hopefully get something there. I would like to kind of see if we could get the mayor or some of the city people in on it. It's a big development that, it would be kind of a nice way to also christen the fire department and christen, this area as kind of a new, visually striking part as you come in on the east side. So,
Can I add something just to?
yeah,
That site, the soil is so compacted. We've planted a lot of trees over the years, so site prep, you have the whole summer to maybe get some cardboard down, big layers of organic matter. Just be thinking about the site prep there.
perfect.
There's a lot of really old trees that are only this big.
Yep. And it is pretty notoriously poor drainage. We were out there even before this, the very near heavy flooding that we got last week. Even before that, just with a light sprinkle, there was a lot of water being retained there. So I think in addition, this could be a good sort of water sink as well. Yes.
I think this is a great project, and I also wanted to add, for future bike path plannings, we know we're gonna have a lot of construction from AEP and from the redoing of the little roundabout over by White's Mill, Little Fish area. Talking about taking out that bike path and replacing things there and adding some new gas line things, which are all needed projects, but then that little spot, particularly behind Little Fish, is just a great natural area. It's pretty exceptional back there. So if we do like this kind of project, that could be a great sort of successor product that we could do. Another spot that is going to need some recovery, and I don't know who we need to ask for permission about it, but I think everybody would want that spot to be restored afterwards.
Are they rerouting the bike path back there, or going around it, or under?
We asked that in the last council meeting. Didn't get a firm answer. Got sort of we're going to try and not disrupt it as much as possible, and a kind of that this will be minimally disruptive, which is great. But almost certainly we're going to lose some great natural habitat over there. So it'd be good to have some work afterwards. Be a great volunteer project too. So
Definitely. Really, I was kind of talking to Dave about this before. The tree bank is here. It's accessible. We'll be getting some new trees put into it. So the more areas, that we can find to put the trees in, they're a lot more used to us in the ground than they are in the tree bank. So definitely be something we'll look into. There's a couple other spots, in addition to right there along where the new gym, the outdoor gym is, they have kind of a new piece of land that is kind of from where they've leveled off for the fire department on the creek side of the bike path. They're working on the bridge on Stimson, so we'll kind of see what becomes of that. But there's a couple other spots kind of through there that we have to plant in, and then as we move ahead, any areas that you guys think, it's at that tree advocates meeting. It sounds like we have a lot of will and a lot of volunteers and a big network to help in the plantings. We have a pretty good system in place to, treat those trees and steward them in the first year. So, the more we can plant in, it's what we should be looking to do. Next one, the big one, change in contractor qualifications. We brought this up at the last meeting. Basically, in essence, having looked at Chapter 11, really the only substantial difference would be ISA certification, arborist certification. Like we kind of covered, that really will just help us in application for these IRA grants, things like that. A lot of them require ISA certification or oversight. So I had sent that rough wording to you, I think, earlier today, Dave. Did you have notes on that?
I have not had a chance to look at it.
Okay, it's pretty rough. It's like 3 sentences.
But it's certainly something we can do. So I don't see we're going to have any issue with it. It makes sense. And the code office would be the housing place for that because all the contractors have to register through our office.
Okay. So I have it, let me see if I can pull it up here. In essence, it basically said, in addition to all of Chapter 11, they must also, either hold current ISA certification, arborist certification, or be under the direction of someone with a current ISA arborist certification. So pretty simple. Would we want to move ahead with ratifying that pending any input from Dave? Does anybody have any issues with that? And then again, that it also comes with that 180-day sort of gap period, so that we can get that out to contractors that we use, give them a chance to get ISA certified. I think 6 months is probably a fine window for them to get ISA certified. So does that sound good to everyone? Does anyone have any objections? Can I get a motion to accept that pending comments from Dave?
Motion.
Motion, second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, there we go. To close this out, we had moved those proposed code changes that Chris Fall had made, the pollinator planting, invasive species, I believe, was on it. Something about the reclassifying of site or of square footage, something like that.
Yeah, so this went to Lisa Eliason, who sent it to our staff, and Andrew Chickey and Andy Stone. We all took a look at it. We made some additional comments, so please look at those and let me know what you think about those. Most of them are pretty basic changes. I did make one change, and I want to be upfront with everybody. I think that the number of trees required per acre on development sites is I won't say unreasonable, but it's difficult to do. You can't. It's very hard to get that many trees on that site. So I'd like to change that, and I made a recommendation. If you don't like it, feel free to make changes to it.
Actually, what I did was I did a little graph for my own head
Okay.
to look at the tree cover. Our comprehensive plan currently looks for 40% canopy cover over the entire city. So if you use that standard and take an oak tree, for instance, an oak tree is going to have between 75 and 150 foot diameter canopy at maturity. And so you calculate the coverage on that, and then if you wanted to have 40%, it would be probably 4 or 5 trees per acre to get 40% coverage. Currently, I think we've got 250 some percent coverage per acre on the way the code is currently written. Maybe you want to go a little heavier than that. Maybe you want to go to 100% coverage, and then you end up with overlapping canopy, right? So if you have will be 10 trees per 10 trees per acre to get 100%. You end up with overlap, but that's not a bad thing either. So, but I think our current requirement for that amount of trees per acre is just hard to do for almost every development. So that's the big change. I also had please look at that and comment back to me. I also had a change to the board's basic some of the basic stuff that you do as a board, and I added, like as you said in the meeting tonight, I added that the board would be responsible for Tree City USA and participating in the Arbor Day events, which I think is something that really should be in writing in the code. Most of I tried to add everything else in the code the way you have. I did want to change the pollinator section. I moved that to Title IX because that really fits more in with that's where we have the mowing and the invasive species and that kind of thing, and it really fits better into that, in my opinion. So I made that change, a couple other minor changes. So please take a look at that and give me comments back.
Yeah, I don't have those changes. So if you could send them over to us.
But that should have been in the package that Monica sent.
Okay. Yeah, the package just kind of came in a couple hours ago. So I'll look over it. Doesn't sound like there's any major.
The big one is the change to the number of trees planted. That requirement, so please take a look at
Okay. I'll definitely look at that. I do kind of, to your point of maybe overkill, I do kind of want to add, this is the only time that we are enforcing that they are planting anything in. So as, like Matlack just covered, there's a lot of mortality right after planting, especially on new developments. So I do think a little bit of overkill probably helps us in the long run of, shooting for maybe, 50% survivalship in the first 5 years is pretty stellar. So we do want to kind of consider that. But I'll look that over. And kind of get into the details of it and see if, how we feel about it. I think Gene will have a lot to say about it too, I'm sure. But we'll look those over. Thanks for getting those to us.
Yeah.
And I think that's basically all we've got. I think that's all we've got on the agenda. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring up or? Once, twice. All right, everybody. Thank you. It's been a long hour and a half meeting here with a lot of guests. So I appreciate your patience and coming out to see us. With that, I would like to get a motion to adjourn. Motion. Second.
I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, everybody.